good afternoon, good night. How you doing? This is MCM and you're listening to You're Probably Right. Today we are going to have a serious conversation. Well, maybe not a serious conversation, but there's going to be a serious talk happening here. Now, of course, I'm only doing the talking, but just stay tuned. I can't seem to help. It's like you cast a spell. I'll keep loving you. You don't love me too. But I won't cry. I'll just sing a lullaby. You moved on already. I know I gotta stay strong. You said that you love me forever, but I guess that's gone. And I can't seem to hide all this pain that I feel inside. But that's okay, I'll just sing a lullaby. Listen, I can't seem to help. No. Oh, it's like you cast a spell. Can't believe we're through. You win and you lose. But I won't cry. I'll just sing a lullaby. Listen. You moved on already, and I know I gotta stay strong. You said that you love me forever, but I guess that's gone. And I can't seem to hide all this pain that I feel inside. But that's okay, I'll sing a lullaby. Hey everyone, this is MCM and you're listening to You're Probably Right podcast. Remember, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. If you actually learn something, it is merely consequential. Whatever. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for hanging out. Got some more views lately. Still can't do much on the ratings thing on Apple, and I feel that Spotify is probably holding back the podcast a little bit. I don't know if it's because I have background music. You know, if you could leave a comment somewhere, anywhere where I could see it, either, you know, I guess the best place would be maybe on my page on Facebook. If you could just let me know how you feel about the podcast, if there's something you'd like me to change or something you'd like me to add to the podcast. It's You're Probably Right podcast. It's on Facebook. You'll see the orange logo. You'll know it's me. It's my face. And yeah, so I'd really, really appreciate it. Remember, I am not saying in any way that I am a professing professor of any profession. Whatever. But I am a professing Christian. But again, most of the thoughts are my own. Every once in a while, I might use a scripture here and there. But remember, when I add a scripture, just off the top of my head, and honestly, I almost never know where it's taken from unless I look for it and write it down to present, which I don't, because again, this is not a Christian podcast, but it is a Christian podcast because it is a podcast by a Christian who believes in the 66 books of the Bible, who believes from Genesis to Revelations. I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I believe he is God, like in John where it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It says that Jesus is seated at the right hand of the high power, who is the Father. The Holy Spirit dwells in each believer. And that's how you know that you're a Christian. You profess with your heart you believe in your heart, you profess with your mouth, you are obedient to the word of God. So once the word says it and it's something that is pertaining to your life or how you should live your life, um, then that's something you should do. um, Basically, that's being a Christian. Also, um, it says, thy word have I hidden in my heart so that I may not sin against thee. Basically means, you read the word, it dwells within your heart, and it shows you right and wrong, this scriptures. And your um, next move as a believer should be to be obedient to the word. And that's how we will know you, by your obedience to his word. And I know that in I don't even know why I kind of went off on this tangent, but I know that, when we're in workplaces, when we're at school, when we're in social settings, sometimes there'll be a lot of peer pressure to have us decide who are we going to listen to. Ultimately, that's what needs to be in our head. We need to decide, are we going to listen to people? Are we going to be sensitive to cultural norms, societal norms, or are we going to listen to God? And I know that it's a struggle for many, and especially those who have a lot of contact with the world, per se. But anyway, I just wanted to say that. All right. So, I love when I go off on tangents. It's almost more fun than doing the structured part of this thing. This podcast episode. Welcome to episode 194 of You're Probably Right podcast. I might sound a little hoarse. I am MCM. I got a little cold, but it's okay. It's kind of cool. If I ever listen to this, I'll be like, who is this? Who is this silver tongue? No. It's still cool to me. Hopefully my voice isn't that irritating. People might even prefer this voice. I mean, it's like, why do you talk with that higher voice usually? It also depends on the time of day, but I'm not going to get into that. Ever find yourself rehearsing what to say to someone, especially if it's someone you're interested in, yet the words stay locked in your head? Maybe you're worried about saying the wrong thing. Maybe you're convinced she or he won't understand. Or maybe you're still trying to figure out what it is you really want to say. Let's talk about those moments when we hold back what we might be going on or might be going on in our head. And whether it's time to finally speak up or keep silent. Hopefully that makes sense to you. All right, let's see. I kind of remember many times when I've wanted to say something and I wasn't sure if I should say as much. In many different situations, my mind's always going. Things always jog my memory. Things that we talk about when I talk about with other people, and you do. I will talk about it a little bit, but you do go back sometimes. Many guys go back. I thought it was just me. I leave a conversation. It's like, man, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I say that? Why, when they made this bold statement, maybe a societal norm, why didn't I say this or that? And sometimes we do know, we're not trying to make enemies. Sometimes we're trying to have the conversation only last 15 seconds. If you challenge somebody on something and you're just passing them the hallway, it might not be the time, but I'm sometimes so tempted to say something different than other people would normally say. And I guess that's kind of why I have this podcast as well. It's because a lot of time I don't agree with societal norms, with what people usually say, what they really believe. I had somebody go off on, a certain thing, and they were concerned about the environment, and this was supposed to be a big deal, the little amount that we had in this place. And I guess their thought process is that if we have a little bit over here and there's a little bit over there, then what will he do when the whole world is gonna implode on itself? And it's like, there's so many people who believe in even like, I know I'm trying to I'm skirting around it, meanwhile talking about things that go unsaid. It's kind of funny. People act like if there's no God, or better yet, there's a God, he dropped this this earth in the middle of the universe, and now he has nothing to do with anything, and it's up to us to save the world. Meanwhile, one hurtling asteroid towards Earth would end it all in the first place. And people just think that that nothing can happen unless we do it. They don't know where they're coming from, in many cases, don't know where they're going, but yet they think that us, people, can save the world. So anyways, having conversations with people, sometimes you want to say something, and it's like, I don't know. So from time to time, honestly, I have a hard time sometimes speaking to adults, because of this. So there's so many of us that have just learned all of these funky ways of understanding the world, and then many believe that their way that they look at the world is so superior to the way that anybody else could possibly look at it, or everybody should look at it the way that they look at it. And that's even a little bit wilder. Anyhow, first, why men rehearse conversations internally. You ever walk away from a conversation and immediately think of the perfect thing you should have said? Men tend to rehearse conversations as a way of, I guess, to control uncertain outcomes. It's like running a mental simulation. If you predict every possible reaction, maybe you won't mess it up, right? Research shows that men, in general, process thoughts internally before speaking, unlike women, who are more likely to process their emotions out loud. And sometimes, you do become a sounding board for some, because they really don't know. Like, I've been asked questions, and it's, have you ever done this? Have you ever done that? And it's kind of like they're bouncing things off of you after the fact. So many of my conversations, especially with women, will be them asking you what I think. Like, maybe a guy unloaded all of his whatever, just unloaded a whole bunch of different thoughts, and every time, depending on how many people this person talks to, every time maybe a guy said something that was a little bit off or a little bit shocking, all it seems like women do is take a mental note and put it in this this clouded mental notebook, and then they bring it over to you to ask you what you think about it. This means that by the time a guy actually opens his mouth, he's already had the conversation 15 ways in his head. Most guys. Whereas, it's not so many times with many women. It seems like. I could be wrong. And if you believe I'm wrong, hey, you're probably right. But there's the catch. Or here's the catch, I should say. Overanalyzing leads to inaction. You spend so much time strategizing that you never say anything at all, or hardly anything. It's kind of like, if you carry on these conversations in your head 15 different ways from Sunday, as they say, then it's almost like you've already had the conversation. And then, you might have had this amazing soliloquy to go on through your mind, or this amazing scenario, almost like a movie in your brain, where you envision it going this way. And usually, a lot of the time, especially if you're interrupted, the person will take you another way and you'll end up in an uncomfortable spot. And then you won't say half the stuff that you wanted to say. But I guess that's just how it goes. And then there's, of course, fear of rejection and social perception, as I was saying. Is silence a choice, or is it just a fear, kind of dressed up as control? Let's be honest. Rejection stings. No one enjoys the feeling of putting themselves out there only to be dismissed. But beyond the surface, well, there's obviously a level of discomfort. Rejection taps into something deeper. Social perception. Many men are often conditioned to believe that competence and confidence define their masculinity. So admitting uncertainty, especially in front of a woman, feels like a hit to your ego and like you've hit rock bottom. The result? Silence becomes a protective mechanism. If you never speak up, you never have to deal with rejection. You never have to deal with, you said this, you said that. But that also, many times means you never get anywhere. So you have to take a chance. And I think that's what most people are really just afraid of being embarrassed. So they try to control the narrative by not saying much. And I don't think that works too well, honestly. I think you're better off. I mean, I know it's not going to work in every situation. Sometimes you're just going to have to let it be what it is. But don't always, I think it's best, especially guys, and I'm sure women have these situations as well. Don't always try to take control of the whole thing, because the reality is eventually at some point you're not going to be in control. Somebody's going to slip a monkey wrench into something that you're saying and take the conversation in a different way. And if you only prepared for a conversation to go this way or that way, believe me, once your interactions with other people, it could go another way. And then if your only mechanism is to just shut up and not say anything else, then you're not really letting your self be yourself. Just let it flow. If there's nothing to say, there's nothing to say. If a conversation gets cut off, it just gets cut off, especially with a new person. Like, you can't think just because somebody looks away that they're the perfect somebody in any way. Different communication norms between men and women. How many moments have passed you by just because you waited too long to say something? Men and women communicate differently. It's not just a stereotype. It's backed by research. Women tend to use more emotional language and indirect communication, which I can honestly say a lot of the time messes us men up, because we don't necessarily get those clues. And I think that's what probably frustrates women the most, because women will say that guys don't communicate. Meanwhile, women will be indirectly communicating different things. And there's many times where guys never really pick up those cues, or, which is worse than never picking them up, but picking them up because you're really, really paying attention, because there's a place you're trying to go with this said woman. And then maybe once your relationship is a real relationship, a marriage even, for some reason most of us get lazy and In other words, if you would, at the beginning of the relationship, get 67% of what she means most of the time, and even you catch some of her indirect communication because you're motivated. Everything's new, right? Young love. But then everything becomes more comfortable, and then you let down your guard. You stop trying as hard, which, your 67% goes down to 37%. You understand? I hope I'm not being too complicated. I'm pretty sure it's pretty simple. While men often rely on more direct solution-based speech, the problem, men usually try to get right to it. When men hesitate, women interpret it as disinterest. When we take too long to pull the trigger on something, it's kind of like guys are like, women are like, oh, maybe he feels this way, maybe he feels that way. The whole point is guys are generally putting out way more messages that they have a clue about. And that's what makes sometimes our communications really awkward, is that sometimes we're literally saying nothing. But at the same time, there's different cues that we're giving off at the same time that maybe other women would give off, but a guy is not giving off those. They are visual, they are perceived, and they are received, even if we didn't even know we were giving off a message at all in some situations. When women hesitate, men interpret it as rejection. Both sides misread each other all the time, leading to missed opportunities and, of course, misunderstandings. The sad thing is, as a guy, a lot of the time it really is a misunderstanding, and it could be the hugest. I don't know how many guys have stepped back sometimes and said, but I really did forget to do that thing. Like, it literally just it just missed me. I totally forgot. And maybe it was something that I don't normally forget, but there might have been something totally clouding my mind, and I was unable to come through in this way. And it's not because I didn't, because if I knew how important it was, then I would have. But there's sometimes so many things that are going on in our lives and in our minds that we forget certain things. And the problem is, there is like a depth chart of importance in many women's heads. And a lot of the time, we as men have no clue what the order is in that depth chart. I'm hoping this will give a little clarity to somebody out there. And then, of course, now in the new world, you have online versus offline communication. If we speak more freely online, why is it so hard to do it in person? Social media and texting have changed the way we interact, and not necessarily for the better. It's easy to craft the perfect message when you have time to think about it, right? There's nobody standing in front of your face. There's nobody waiting because you need to get into the car, and somebody didn't all of a sudden walk up in person. Somebody could walk up and cut into your conversation, or the person who you're speaking to could cut you off, and you could lose your total train of thought. Whereas if you're on social media or on text, you could even look up something and reference something. You can perfectly craft your message, and even put more heart into it. You can read the words of rejection so much easier than seeing somebody's face, hearing the words. Maybe they're said loudly, maybe they're said really fast. Meanwhile, the person is peering into your soul. Whereas, online, you have time. Sometimes you don't have that much time because the person's expecting you to answer right away, and sometimes you really don't know. But you can usually come up with something. And you can also delete, edit, rewrite. But in real life, there's no backspace button. If you said it, you put it out there, it's out there no matter what. And it might be the worst thing you put out there because you rushed what you were saying, or you were in a rush with what you were saying. A lot of guys rely on digital communication to build connection, but struggle when it comes to face-to-face interactions. The confidence they have behind a screen doesn't translate into the real world, leaving them stuck in a cycle of digital bravado and real-life hesitation. So my encouragement would be, just say what you need to say. Biting your tongue is only going to hurt you in the end. Literally, it'll only hurt you. I mean, sometimes there's stuff you don't have to say because you're not trying to hurt somebody's feeling, but sometimes it's necessary for you to say whatever, as that song says, say what you need to say. And then there's the cost of staying silent. Are you holding back because it's wise or because you're scared? You really got to balance the two. And I think most have to balance the two. If you talk to a lot of people every day, you really have to balance that. Are you holding back because it's wise or because you're scared? And scared of what? I'm not saying, maybe your fear is that you'll be rejected. Maybe you fear that you'll say something wrong. Maybe there's a word you're holding back that is the correct word, but you're scared of being corrected because you want to be right about everything. You want to throw the word perpendicular in there, or adjacent. And you're not so sure if your words are, or your statements are congruent with the one that you just said before that. You don't want to sound like a hypocrite, so you want everything to be in sync, right? That's how guys think. They're really technical with the things that they say. And many of us are quick to try to fix everything, try to pat everything down, and try to make it okay. And a lot of the time, women want to process it properly. Sometimes guys feel like it's not important to process it as much as a woman wants to sometimes. Every time you choose silence over speaking, you reinforce a pattern. You see, there's a word there. Refrain. No, you reinforce a pattern. The more you hesitate, the easier it becomes to keep hesitating. Over time, this builds internal stress, regrets over missed chances, frustration with yourself, and growing fear of social interaction. Silence doesn't protect you from failure. It guarantees it. You'll never know what could have been, what could have happened if you don't take the chance to find out. So, in essence, I would say you're really living in fear when you hold back all the things you want to say. I mean, you've been given this amazing supercomputer of a brain. And if you're always going to be scared to speak up, there's going to be so many lost chances. And yeah, I understand you'll get rejected here and there, but you gotta say what needs to be said. I mean, if you spent any intellectual learning time at all in your life, then I guarantee you have something to say. And a lot of the time, guys don't say anything. And then it becomes social norms. And I think it's what happens to society. People stop standing up for what they believe. It's not good. Simply put, it's not good. Say what you think. And yeah, you might get your hand slapped, but maybe the person who slaps your hand will still coming away with something. And maybe you'll both go away with more information, more data, more learning, more deep learning for people in this strange society. What's worse? I mean, what happens when you finally speak? What's worse, saying the wrong thing or never saying anything? Many of us have lost all kinds of opportunities because of not saying anything. You have no idea what could have happened in that situation. You have none at all. Think about all the different situations that's come out in your own life, that of times that you did say something and you were presented with opportunities that you never thought you would have had. Now, sadly, some people go, use liquid courage or chemical courage to be a way. That's not great either, because then you have to rely on those things. Sometimes you just have to have the guts to know that sometimes your hands are going to get slapped, and that's just the way it is. Sometimes you're going to be rejected. Sometimes people will be hiding a trump card and you won't even know. I've known people who have sought after others, not knowing full well the whole time the person was married, and that person wasn't trying to even say they were, because they were just playing with them. Whereas if the guy had made his intentions known from the beginning, then he wouldn't have been embarrassed after all of that. Men who communicate honestly, even if they stumble, tend to have stronger relationships. Now, maybe not more relationships, but stronger relationships. And I think that's what most men actually want. Guys don't need 50 friends, 20 friends, 17 friends, even 5 friends. Learning to express yourself isn't about getting everything right. It's about being real. The more you practice speaking openly, the less terrifying it becomes. And the reality is, most people appreciate honesty over perfection. And sometimes it doesn't seem that way. I personally can compare myself to somebody who always speaks professionally. But then sometimes they go off on tangents and they're not able to read the room. And they don't realize how many people they've just offended, and they just keep saying what they feel like saying. Whereas if you, especially if you do have a level of emotional intelligence, can read the room, I would say what you need to say. If you've been blessed, I know that a lot of guys don't have that, but if you happen to be a person who can read people's expressions, then you can kind of govern yourself accordingly. I know it's a little bit of a dance, and it's something that I actually struggle with because if I'm reading the room and I'm reading, sometimes the way I am as an introvert, I read people's reactions to what I'm saying even more than what they say. So I'm taking in a whole bunch of data, and sometimes the information that I'm receiving from their body language, from even, just how they're saying things, but their body language, their facial expressions, sometimes disrupts me speaking about certain things. And sometimes I'm overly sensitive, where some people are under sensitive about people's expressions, people's body language. So we have to remember to make sure that that is a thing when we are also communicating, so that we do not put ourselves in, awkward situations too many times. Which, again, sometimes we have to get comfortable with just being in awkward positions, but I would say the caveat to that is that we have to be okay with not being comfortable all the time. And I think it's part of growing up and part of being a man. Part of being a woman is that sometimes it's not going to be comfortable. Sometimes you have signed up for this, just having human interaction. Sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable, and you don't have to freak out. You can let somebody get their thoughts out as well. Sometimes the strongest words you'll never ever speak are the ones that scare you the most. And sure, there are moments when saying nothing is wise. But if you're the only thing standing between silence and genuine connection, maybe the risk is actually worth it. It may not give you tens of friends, but so what? Conversation is conversation, and I think they need to be had. So what conversations have you been waiting to have? Think about it. Anyhow, I will stop it right here. Hopefully this wasn't too dense. I'll see you next time, or you'll hear me next time. Again, pass the podcast off to a friend. Pass it off to an enemy. Pass it off to anybody. And hopefully I can grow this thing. Anyhow, thanks for listening. Take care. This is MCM, and you're listening to You're Probably Right. Take care. Oh yeah, before I go, remember, if you have any questions you want to ask, or maybe you have a topic that you want me to talk about, you can email me at yprpodcast@gmail.com. Take care. Hey, come check out You're Probably Right podcast. Society is getting more unpredictable every day, but at the same time, predictable in its unpredictability. Say that 4 times real fast. Come with me as I attempt to find clarity in all the fog while staying way outside the box and kicking the box way down the road with my size 12 docs. I use the Bible, experience, education, fortune, misfortune, life's lessons, life's mistakes to sort through all the mess. I talk about news, God, God, self-help, sports, sickness, health, music, parenting, love, humbleness, hurt, pain, joy, and all the things that might make you say, I never thought of it that way. Hopefully, anyway. Also, I take a stab at answering tough and not so tough questions, and all the while understand that, listen, sometimes you end up in the hot seat and there's no thermostat. Well, that's how it is here. And because there's no topic, very few topics off the table, Torontonians will understand that Doug Ford reference there. Hopefully the podcast will be helpful and uplifting. And hey, maybe you'll find your own private Idaho here somewhere. Hope to see you soon.